There we go. Now it is being recorded. All right. So the meeting today is being recorded, and the automated closed captions are available. So if you need help or technical assistance as we go along through today, please feel to direct message me in chat. So while we're letting folks in from the waiting room, if you could take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat by putting your name, your title or your role, at where you're, what institution you work for, and where you're joining us from today. We would very much appreciate that. And we will let some folks get settled in here. And so we'll get started in one moment. Okay, so if you just joined us, welcome. If you would take a second to introduce yourself in the chat by putting your name, your title or role, the institution or organization you work for, and where you're joining us from today. And we'll get started in about 10 seconds. All right, so thank you, everybody. And again, welcome. I'm pleased to introduce Sarah May Nelson, who is the academic coordinator for the UC Climate Stewards Initiative, which is a part of the UC Environmental Stewards Program at the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources. I will be putting Sarah May's full bio into the chat, so please do take a look at that. I will also be putting a previous link or a link to Sarah May's previous workshop, which was actually the first ever dynamic discussion back in March of 2022. And so if you haven't seen that, please do take a moment to watch that afterwards, because today's session is really part two of that dialogue. I will also be putting a link to the feedback form for today's session. So we would really appreciate it if you would take a moment to let Sarah know how she did, and if you have any further questions that she can help you with, as well as help us know what kind of topics you're looking forward to in future sessions. And last, but certainly not least, Sarah May will be putting worksheets into the chat. So when she does that, do be sure to grab them, because we will all be using them in an activity later on in this session, or a number of activities actually later on in this session. And so with that, I am going to stop sharing and turn the floor over to Sarah May. Sarah May.
Thanks so much, Jason. Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, or I don't think it's evening where anybody is at the moment. It's really nice to be invited back by Extension Foundation to present the second part of this series. My name is Sarah May. My birth year, there were about, I don't know, I went to school with 5 other Sarahs. So Sarah May is what I do go by professionally, just to kind of make myself stand out. My expertise is in climate communication and education and interpretation, and I really am spending more and more time understanding the connections between misinformation and disinformation and malinformation that are going on in our world related to a variety of things, and what I have learned from climate change communication that is really helping address all of those issues across all of the various topics that we encounter working within Extension across the country, and just related education and science fields everywhere as well. So my presentation today is part 2 of this. I did share a little bit more in depth about some of these materials in the first part of the session, and today we're going to be diving a little bit deeper. I'm going to do a quick recap of what I covered in the first part of the session, and then go into our next steps. So just recapping that first session, science and climate communication are increasingly more intertwined. Science communication pretty much covers any specific topic in science that you might be working with, whether it's ecology, whether it's agriculture, whether it's something very specific like atmospheric sciences. But more and more we're learning that what we have experienced with climate communication over the last 30 years with the increasing efforts to discredit climate scientists around the world, the lessons that we learned there are more and more applicable to broader science-related topics as science continues to come under attack by a variety of entities across the globe, but very specifically in the United States. And connected with this is the idea of what we call information disorder. So information disorder is the technical term used for what might be more broadly known as fake news. And this covers three types of information disorder: misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And I'll talk about that more in a second. And what we know from a lot of research, both from psychology and social sciences, is that the messengers are critically important. Getting accurate information to people in this world of increasing disorder around how people consume information and communication. And what we also know is that the more we talk about the things that matter to us or that matter to the world in general, the more important they become in the awareness of the people we're communicating with. So if we talk about climate once and never bring it up again, then its importance to the people in our circle of communication declines. But if it's something we talk about a lot, then that's something that's going to become more part of their awareness and part of their circles of concern. And last but not least, through the activity we're going to do today, we're going to really address what we can think of as the confirmation bias trap, and that's directly related to certain ways of communicating that can reconfirm what people already believe instead of helping them move in the direction of what is the true situation or the accurate information regarding the science. So just to kind of step into this a little bit more deeply, as I mentioned, there are the three types of information disorder, and these slides and all of this material will be available to you, so don't feel like you have to take furious notes. So misinformation is information that is false, but it's not shared with the intent of causing harm. So a great example of this might be, I said 1,000 instead of saying 10,000. I just got my numbers mixed up, or maybe there was a typo somewhere in the document. I said the wrong thing, and yes, it was false, but I wasn't trying to cause a problem with that information. It was a mistake. Disinformation is also information that is false, but it's created to cause harm. A good example of disinformation would be a rumor that you might have created in high school or heard about in high school about a particular person that was intended to harm their reputation. It's completely not true, and it was created with the intent to be harmful. And then malinformation is information that is true. It is based on reality, but it is specifically grabbed and used to cause harm. So this might be digging into someone's past when they were much younger and a completely different person, finding some mistake that they made and bringing it back to inflict on them in a new reality with the intent of harming their reputation or causing something to be problematic. So just another kind of way to visualize information disorder is the difference between what is false, what is true, and what is not meant to cause harm and what is meant to cause harm. So this is a figure that was created in a paper by Wardle and Durkheim in 2017 with very extensive information about what information disorder is and the work that's being done to counteract that. Now, I mentioned in this world of so much information that we cannot possibly consume all of it with all these content creators and all of these sources across the internet and various sorts of media. One of the things that we know, and this is some really incredible research that's been done by the folks at Yale, as well as some of the PhD students and then doctors that have worked in close association with them, is that the social influence of even the perception of the messenger is really important, especially in the United States. So research indicates that certain segments of our population here in the United States are more influenced by the source of the message than the message itself. So they might believe something just because a certain person said it, whether or not the information is true. Like they might not even consider whether that information could be false if a certain person said that information. And I think we can all think of examples of this in our real reality. And then this research also suggests that engaging people on non-political identities, and this can be a wide range of things, from hunting, birding, parenting, being a video game enthusiast, will likely lead to more constructive conversations about climate change. So this research was explicitly done on climate change, but we can make connections to other types of science as well, especially when it comes to controversial science topics. Now, one of the things that's really important to remember, and again, I'm reflecting on the presentation I gave last year, that's why I'm talking very quickly, is that humans tend toward confirmation bias. And so essentially confirmation bias is if we believe something and someone that we're communicating with affirms or confirms that in our mind, then we don't really think beyond that confirmation. And that causes us to hold even more tightly to the things that we already believe. And what the confirmation bias trap is if we repeat a myth or misinformation back to someone in conversation, it can confirm to them through this confirmation bias state of mind the incorrect or inaccurate belief. So one of the things we're taught in therapy, and I've been in a lot of therapy, so I know how this works, is when you're trying to communicate with someone, take what they've said to you, paraphrase it, and say it back to them. And that is 10,000% what we do not want to do in these cases of information disorder, especially related to science communication. Because if we say back to them the incorrect information they already believe, what their brain hears is the confirmation of their belief, and they stop paying attention beyond that. And there's, again, a lot of research that demonstrates this to be the reality, to be the case. So if someone says, I've always heard that climate change was natural and it's happened a lot of times in the past, and you say back to them, well, while you may have heard that climate change is natural, it's actually not. All they hear is that first part that confirms their belief. So now what? How do we possibly talk to people in a way that can move them in the direction of accurate information, productive dialogue, conversations that lead to something where both parties are reaching mutual, maybe not agreement, but a mutual place of understanding? Well, there's a communications technique. It's called bridging and pivoting. And this is something that's very, very, very well known in public relations. You have probably seen this happen a lot of times before. And it's the recognition of a question without giving weight or power to the idea behind the question. And for you, when you practice this technique, it answers the question you wish you had been asked. Now, I know several of you are probably bristling right now because you have seen this in action. When maybe a reporter asks a question of a political candidate or a celebrity, and the celebrity or the political candidate turns that around and doesn't answer the exact question being asked, but they redirect to something else. That is bridging and pivoting. And you may feel, well, that's not valid, that's manipulation, that's something I never want to do. And I sympathize with you. But what I will tell you as a communications expert is, it is a technique that works, and that is why it is used, and that it is how it is so powerful and used to affect millions of people around the world. And even though it feels a little bit crunchy, it doesn't mean you have to use it in a deceptive or problematic way. It is a powerful technique that we all can employ to further our work as scientists, as communicators, as educators in a way that is valid and honest and furthering the conversation without manipulating our audience. So I just want you to, for a moment, take those crunchy feelings and set them aside. And we're going to work through how this works. And towards the end, we'll have some time to talk about this. So how does bridging and pivoting work? Well, it's a three-step process. And the slides that I'm going to share with you now, these are part of a larger training in climate communication that's put together by the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation. They do have several additional, more in-depth training sessions. And again, while these are focused to climate, they are applicable to every sort of science, every sort of conversation. I've worked in a lot of different fields, but again, this is coming with information language around climate change because that's my primary area of focus right now. So the first thing you need to do is figure out where they're coming from. You analyze the situation and you identify the cultural mindset at work. And we're going to try this out to kind of help us figure out how this is thought through in just a second. And I'm going to share with you a graphic that we call the swamp, where cultural mindsets kind of get a little mushy and hard to understand. The next thing you do is you bridge from what is being asked to where you want to go. So you use a redirecting phrase to introduce your framed message. And again, we don't want to do confirmation bias affirming. We are going to not restate that swampy thinking. And last but not least, we use an element that matches the model at play to redirect and move in a new direction where we can hopefully reach mutual understanding. So I'm going to ask everybody to respond in the chat here in just a second. So this set of photos is 15 photos, and I went on to Google and I Googled climate change. And how the Google algorithm works, if you're not familiar, is the more people select an item, the higher it rises in the search results. So when you especially Google images, you're really seeing a representation of what other people think is a visualization of whatever you're Googling. So in this case, I Googled climate change, and these are the top 15 images that came up across however many millions of people use Google. So what I want you to put in the chat is, what do you see? What stands out at you as common across all of these different images? And for that matter, what do you not see that you would hopefully expect to see? Red or orange color associated with alarm, wide angle views, definitely. Weather, images of the whole planet, images evoking dryness or heat, fire, lots of red and orange color, destruction, yeah, no people, missing images of people. Yeah, comparison images before and after, temperature differences, contrast between life and death. I don't see anyone concerned about food. Yep, that's definitely a thing. Nothing local, everything is at a really zoomed out scale. Yep, there's some polar bears there to evoke emotion. Direct effects of climate on weather, don't see anything on social and environmental justice aspects. Yeah, these are all great observations. And why I show this to you is to give you an insight into the cultural mindset around climate change. This is how people are thinking about climate change. Now, it's not 100% accurate, but it's a good proxy for kind of getting quick information on the experience. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, but with another topic. This is when you Google agriculture. This is the top 15 images that pop up when you Google agriculture. So again, same thing. What do you notice or what do you not notice that you would expect to be there? And again, this is a proxy for kind of how people think of agriculture, folks that are using Google. So see large fields, green, the scale is really big, lots of row crops, yep, no livestock. Food production, green, no animal ag. People are workers, no eaters, climate change effects are missing, no climate impacts, tidy rows, I like that, no animals. Yeah, the hazmat suit is a little problematic. I wonder if it's concerning. Yeah, no bees, really important components. Yeah, it seems like there is an abundance, like there's no problem, lots of monocultures, limited biodiversity, definitely. And again, this is a good proxy for what people think of when they think of agriculture. Okay, so we're only going to do this one more time, but this next set is Googling the term natural resources. So again, same sort of thing. What do you see or what do you not see? No people, lots of trees, no animals, logging, yep, no wildlife, lots of chopped up wood, forestry, yep, the word natural a whole lot for sure. Does anything strike you as very different? Yes, Elise got it. Lots of diagrams. Really opposed to agriculture, there's not a lot of real things. It's a lot of infographics. A lot of it's extractive, absolutely. Yeah, and again, I show you these examples to give you an idea of what people might be thinking when they think of these terms. And I really encourage you to do this with whatever your area of focus might be. It's not a perfect one-to-one example of what folks might think, but it really helps you kind of get a broader understanding of what the cultural mindset around a particular topic might be. And you can go down a rabbit hole with this for sure. So when I talk about cultural mindsets, in the work that I have done in the past, we often call this the swamp. Now, that's nothing against swamps. I think swamps are lovely. I just did a round trip tour of the country and spent a lot of time in swamps myself. But we work with an organization called Frameworks Institute. And Frameworks is a group of folks who do social science research to figure out what people are thinking and what sort of messaging resonates with people to direct them toward behavior change. So that's a key. We're looking at what helps change people's behavior. It's not just change their knowledge, because that might be a little different. What helps people change their behavior? And so the way this is set up is we have different categories that might be problematic as relates to the ideas of ocean and climate change. And so the way it's set up is the bottom is red, or if you have color limitations, the bottom, which is the darkest color, is what you want to avoid. So this works like a stoplight. The middle, the yellow or the lightest color, is things that sometimes work and sometimes don't, so they're kind of in a gray area. And the ones at the top that are green or the medium color are the ones that really work to help change people's thoughts and behaviors around a particular topic. So this is what's connected to the area of ocean and climate change, and this is where this work originally started. This next one is cultural mindsets about social inequities and climate change. And so you can see that some of them are very similar, but again, there's ones that are different. So some of the buckets are a little bit different, but it works the same way, just like a stoplight. And, there are definitely things that we've probably all heard before. So if we look at science, you know, we've definitely heard, well, my observation is as good as yours, or, well, there's a new study every week. How can what you say be true? You know, one of the things that may work or may not work is, well, how do scientists know that? And it could be used in the context of, well, I don't trust it, or maybe I'm asking you because I want to learn. And then what we know resonates with people significantly across the country, and again, this is focused on people living in the United States, is the concept of science being innovation resonates a lot with people toward them changing their behavior around science. So we are going to jump into an exercise. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you those, I'm going to give you the SWAMP graphic here. I'm dropping that into the chat. And I'm also going to give you the cultural mindsets graphic. So there's that. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump into an activity where we're going to look at a particular situation related to these cultural mindsets. We're going to analyze it. Then we are going to select a bridging phrase, and then we're going to pivot to a redirecting idea. So examples of some bridging phrases might be what's here. A bridging phrase can really be whatever is comfortable for you. How to redirect, it's like a transitional word in a sentence. All of us who write a lot, we know, like, in addition, therefore, hence. It's the same sort of thing, but a little bit more in depth. And then we're going to pivot to a particular concept. Now, in the information, again, that this was originally created for, the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation, Strategic Framing for Climate Communication, we have a series of things that we know work very well to pivot toward that helps further the conversation and further the understanding or behavior change. So an example of those are what we consider our toolbox. And again, these are tested. So these have been tested with over 10,000 people across the United States from a variety of demographics. And what we know are these particular values, responsible management and protection, work in this context of climate and most sciences. Are metaphors related to regular and rampant carbon dioxide, the heat trapping blanket effect, osteoporosis of the sea, looking at ocean acidification, and climate's heart related to the ocean being an engine around climate, as well as explanatory chains connecting our topic with other materials of concern, and then looking at solutions. Now today, I'm really just going to focus on two of these. The regular and rampant carbon dioxide and the heat trapping blanket. I have an example, and we're going to work through that example together as a group. And then we're going to break you up into breakout rooms to work through the next two examples on your own, and then we'll come back together to discuss how all of this works together. So I know I'm giving you a lot of materials, and I know we just don't have a lot of time, but I'm giving you now the examples of what we call reframe cards for the values and metaphors. And now I'm popping in our handout that has the bridging phrases written at the bottom of the second page. And last but not least, this is what we're going to use right now. This is our worksheet. And my suggestion is going to be when we put you in your breakout rooms, that one person opens up the SWAMP graphic and the worksheet on their computer and shares the screen with everyone. So I'm going to close my PowerPoint at this time, and I'm going to open our example. So let me make sure it's big enough for folks to see. Okay, so here's our worksheet. There we go. So here's our, let me share my screen again. Okay, so here's our worksheet. And so the example that we're working with is this phrase: I've heard that climate change is natural and has happened before. And I'm sure most of you who work with climate have heard this from folks before. So what we're going to do is we're going to, oops, oh my goodness, many things are happening. I'm going to pull up now, we're going to analyze our swampy statements. So I'm going to pull up now our swamp, and I want just as a group for us to kind of look at this and think about, again, that statement. I've heard that climate change is natural and has happened before. So where within this group of swampy statements might this come into play? So, and if anybody wants to just throw that into the chat, what your thoughts are, we can kind of look at that. Yep, definitely nature. And specifically within the nature category, what might be that particular mindset that we're thinking about? Yep, change is natural, nature works in cycles, absolutely. These are all kind of part of those components. Okay, so the next set is, if we're thinking about this phrase, I've heard that climate change is natural and has happened before, what might this question actually be about? And for this, because we don't have too many people here, if you want to bring yourself off mute and just share it verbally instead of trying to type it into the chat, what might this question actually be about?
Sarah, May, could you clarify, because it's not a question?
Yes. So kind of, there's probably a thought behind this statement. So if you're talking to folks about climate change and somebody says, well, I've heard that climate change is natural and has happened before, there's something behind that. So what is prompting this person to make this statement in response to your communication about climate change? So what is maybe behind what they're communicating? And you know what? They probably don't want to change their behavior. Yep, that's a great example for sure. Yep, they could absolutely be seeking confirmation bias. Like, please tell me what I think is actually true. Yep, kind of looking back to that idea of nature will fix itself, wanting to defer that guilt, not experiencing that, thinking it's their fault. They have no idea what can be done or what needs to be done. And they might truthfully just be saying what they've heard before. They might, everyone in their communication group might be saying, well, it's just natural, it's fine. But what they actually might be asking you to do is confirm whether it is or not. Yeah, I hear you, David. There are a lot of possibilities, but we know that in kind of the general realm of this communication, that there is a way to respond to this that can further the conversation instead of shutting the conversation down. So again, kind of keeping all of this in mind, is there any implied solution, or what is the implied solution if it's there? So if climate change is natural and has happened before, is there an implied solution, or if there is, what could it be? Sit back and relax while nature fixes itself. Yep, absolutely. We don't have to do anything because it's happened before and it will resolve itself 100%. And kind of associated with that, who's responsible, or is anyone responsible? So again, related to Jacob's question, yeah, David, absolutely. Maybe we shouldn't intervene if it's natural. Maybe it's going to take care of itself. Maybe they know about things we've done in the past to try to fix things that haven't gone very well. And it is diverting responsibility away from themselves so they don't have to feel that guilt, like I've done something that has caused this to happen. And then because this is a little bit more in depth than we have time for today, the frame elements that pivot this SWAMPy statement, and I'm going to give you an example in just a moment, is this idea of regular and rampant carbon dioxide. That's the one we really like to use, and I'll explain that in just a moment. And the SWAMPy elements that it combats is that idea that nature can just do it all on its own, that it's going to happen, that it's too big to be impacted, that there's nothing, there's no parts that humans play in this overall picture. So, so an example of how we might respond to that. So the idea of regular and rampant carbon dioxide is that regular carbon dioxide is a part of natural processes. We learned about it when we were kids, that plants take in carbon dioxide and they put out oxygen. And that's where a lot of people have heard about carbon dioxide before. And so they don't really connect carbon dioxide as being a problem. So regular carbon dioxide is a part of natural cycles, but rampant carbon dioxide is the result of humans burning fossil fuels for transportation, electricity, and other purposes. And as a result, there's so much carbon dioxide coming out so fast that there's too much of it happening too quickly, and it's getting out of control. So an example of a bridging phrase and a response might be something like, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you all. So the bridging phrase is what's important to understand, and my response might be, what's important to understand is that climate change we are experiencing now has happened in the span of only 200 years. This current change is much faster than any regular changes that might have happened in the past, and much faster than living organisms, including humans, can adapt to. Current climate change has happened so fast because of the massive amounts of carbon dioxide humans have added to the atmosphere through the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and methane gas. This is something we call rampant carbon dioxide because there is too much of it going into the atmosphere too quickly, and it's getting out of control. So I know, again, I know this is like super fast. We're trying to fit this all into 1 hour, but this is an example of how this might work. And the more you practice it, the better it works. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. And because this is taking a little bit longer than I anticipated, which is pretty much what everything does, we're just going to focus on one question. So we're just going to look at example 2 on the worksheet. So I'm going to put the worksheet in the chat again. So we're just going to look at example 2. And in your breakout rooms, you're going to work your way through the different components of this. Do your best. I know this is pretty quick, fast action. But do your best, and we're going to come back together to review kind of what everybody did and to answer questions as well. So Jason, we are going to break into those breakout rooms.
Yes, we are. So everybody has been assigned to a breakout room. I'm stalling for a minute to let everybody make sure they click the box in the chat to download the document or the worksheet that you will need for this activity. We have 10 minutes. Is that correct? Did I hear that correct? Yeah. Okay. So as soon as I open all the rooms, you will automatically go there. Please feel free to turn off your camera and unmute yourself and introduce yourself to each other and begin to do the project. So with that, if you don't get transferred, I will do that automatically. So 1 second, opening the rooms.
All right, let's say everybody's there. Do we want to pause the recording?
Yep. Need to find.
So I know that that was probably a challenging activity since you got a fire hose of information and a whole bunch of documents and trying to jump through it. But I will say the most important thing is starting the process of thinking in a different way. One of the things that's most important for our learning is forcing ourselves to think about things in a different way. So you might not have completed the exercise. That's totally fine. We're just trying to get you to think about things a little bit differently. So I just want to take a minute or two to have folks share, you know, what was it like thinking about this, trying to identify the cultural model at work? Was it easy? Was it hard? Did it jump right out at you? Were there multiple options? And please feel free to come off mute and share.
My group definitely had an instance of seeing multiple options with this one. Like there's the idea of civic responsibility. Whereas, you know, if you are to convince this person that, I'm echoing myself. I don't know what's going on. If you are to convince this person that they are interconnected with other people on the world, even if they do have that belief that they're not, then you can, you know, try to pivot on that. Or if they are really stuck in their ways, you can try to pivot based on logic of just, you know, it's kind of impossible to say that I will be completely unaffected by climate change, even if you are, you know, the richest man in the world. If wherever your fortunes come from will be affected by whatever goes on in climate change. So you might not be affected as much as the average person, but it's possible to say that it doesn't affect me.
Yeah, for sure. How about thinking about what the problem was actually about? Did anyone think through that? Did you get to that point? So this statement, even if the climate is changing, it's not going to affect me. Why should I care? What might that statement actually be about instead of just that statement?
It could be a recognition that the costs, economic or otherwise, of doing something would be high. And maybe optimistically, it's just if this individual had a list of possible actions that would be helpful, it might be easier for them to act.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Christy. That's so important. One of the things that we have learned, again, from a ton of research is people who say, well, climate change isn't real, right? Or I've always heard it's natural. It might not be that they're denying climate change. It's because they actually want you to talk to them and explain to them, I've always heard it was this. You're telling me otherwise? Why? And, you know, we need to understand that there is a spectrum of skepticism and doubt and denial. And sometimes it's because people are afraid. It's because they feel guilty. It's because they've only heard one thing, or the people they trust are saying one thing, and now you're coming in and telling them something else. We need to be really open to listening to what is behind the question instead of just the words of the question, for sure. So I'm going to pause here. As I mentioned to some folks, I've done an 8-hour workshop on this, and I had to try to fit it into just a few minutes. Wanted to give you those resources so you can start working with them. The National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation that does strategic framing, that includes bridging and pivoting. They're having a crash course coming open in the fall. It's a 6-week course. If you have interest in that, I can share the information there. But I just want to pause for a minute and say, I know this was really fast. If anybody has any questions, please contact me. I'm happy to chat. I really appreciate Extension Foundation asking me back. This is what I do every day as I talk about climate change. So don't feel like you're going to figure this out in one go. I've been doing this, practicing this for a really long time, and I still don't get it right. I was getting my hair done, and my hairdresser was like, well, I've always heard that climate change happens in cycles. It's natural, right? And I'm sitting there completely unprepared, having all these tools in my hand, and I still didn't do this whole activity because, you know, it's just a mindset partly for us. So don't feel like you have to get it perfect the first time. So any thoughts, any questions, anything that I can do to further to support you in this work or answer as you think through this activity?
Sarah May, I just wanted to let you know that on my Bridge and Pivot lesson worksheet, the example number 3, the font is messed up.
Oh, okay. We can fix that, and I will get you a better worksheet.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks everyone. I appreciate you hanging in there through a very quick lesson. And if you're interested in learning more, as I said, please let me know. Happy to connect further.
Great, Sarah May, thank you so much for agreeing to present with us again. We appreciate you doing that and taking the time out to do that. Thank you to everybody who was here today and for sticking to the very end. I stuck several links into the chat. One is the feedback form. Please do take a moment to fill that out. Another is a link to the different professional development opportunities that the Extension Foundation offers. Dynamic Discussions is just one of 3. So if you're new and haven't been able to attend one of our other workshops, please do check them out at the link in the chat. And then I also put the link to Sarah May's March 2022 workshop, part 1. Several folks were having issues with their Connect extension account and accessing that video. So if you do click on the link and you have an issue, there is a help button or widget, I forget what it is, in Connect extension that you can click, fill out a form, and it'll send an email, and one of our tech support folks will fix your account so you can access the video. So with that, I just want to remind you that the slides, the handouts, and all the links that were provided in chat will be sent in a follow-up email next week. And with that, again, thank you very much, Sarah May, for this workshop. And to everybody, have a good afternoon and a weekend. We will see you at the next dynamic discussion.